Hello. Today we're going to take a local ped, this could also be somebody's custom ped, and transfer both a component and a prop from MP Freemode to the ped itself. This one is non-streamed. This is ig_ramp_mex.ydd. So non-streamed means all of his components are in this singular YDD. And I've also made sure that he does not have an existing props file or setup or anything. So if anybody is in that situation, you can watch me go over that and create it from scratch as well. Okay, so when we're going into Blender, like I say in almost every ped video, you should know how to do this already, especially for working with custom peds, but just in case, let's make sure. I just searched him up in CodeWalker RPF. Here are his 4 related files, and I just grabbed the YDD, the YFT, and the YTD and made all of those XML, and then I took the YMT as well, but obviously I won't need that in XML format. So that's what I have in my setup folder along with the shirt that I'm going to import with him. And in Blender, when we go to import the YDD.xml, over here under drawable dictionary, we have import external skeleton turned on, of course, so that we have all of our bones and whatnot. So here he is. Let me quickly set up my blend file. These are all optional things that you don't have to follow along exactly with what I do, but I prefer matte cap, texture to see the textures, and then backface culling is so that I can see if there's any holes or anything in any of the meshes, although unlikely that happens in today's video. Just for me in particular, since I'm just taking a random ped I found, you can see here he has 2 different heads, but obviously if this is something you were going to play in RP or something like that, you would probably want to choose which head you're using. I am just going to use 000, so I'm going to delete the hierarchy of 001, and then everything else is all set up. He has a couple of different accessories, a couple of different task things, and 2 different shirts. So we are ready to go with that. Now I'm going to import the MP shirt. For this, it is optional whether you want to grab the Freemode YFT and import with the external skeleton. The biggest thing to note here is that MP Freemode usually has more bones than any other local ped, and I can show you that once we get. So I'm just going to, for the sake of it, I already have the YFT here, so I'm going to import with external skell turned on, but just so you know, you don't have to. You can just wait transfer like we always do. So here is the shirt. The thing I want to point out is if you look, the reason you can't just straight up like drag and drop this shirt into his setup and go is because if you'll notice, MP Freemode here has 128 bones and our skeleton has 98 bones. Usually the missing bones are hair scale and front and back skirt roll. So there's a left and right front skirt roll and a left and right back skirt roll. And that's still, there's probably some face bones that are different as well, I have to assume, to make up the other 20. But either way, so this is why it's optional to import with external skell, because depending on what you import, you just have to pay attention to what bones you have on your custom ped or the ped that you're working on. You have to get to know what bones they do and don't have if you're going to be transferring in things from other peds. So you can see that for this shirt, because it goes down past his waist, if we look, it has SMR front skirt roll and SMR back skirt roll, and left side, front, and back as well. So 4 bones. And if I go to look in my skeleton for my ped, you can see he has thigh roll bones, but there's no front skirt roll anywhere around here. And if I were to look at the skeleton for a free mode, you can see thigh roll and then back and front skirt roll. So those bones are missing. And so that means we can't just drag and drop this shirt into his ped. There are there's a couple different ways to solve it. You can either just go through and manually delete. I could manually delete this back skirt roll and front skirt roll. That means that you would have to make up for those missing weights on the rest of the bones. Or, like I said from the get-go, you could just import this shirt without the external scale and just have an empty vertex groups and then just weight transfer like you always would. And that would, weight transferring from your ped to a new mesh would obviously only use the bones that you already have on your ped. So depends on what you want to do. There's different ways to solve it. How do I get back to, there we go. If you were going to delete them and then make up for that, what you would have to do in weight paint mode. So let's say I delete front skirt roll, left and right, and back skirt roll, left and right. Now, an important thing to know about weight painting, and this goes for any ped, regardless of the situation, is given any single vertex on a shirt, a pair of pants, a head, arms, whatever, given any single vertex on a mesh, if you look at the item information, you can see here there's a drop down here called vertex weights. These weights need to add up to 1.00. They need to add up to 1. So you can see on something random, I wanted to try to get you an easy one to see. Okay, do a little bit of math here. But so if you see this is using 2 different bones, it uses spine 3 and the right clavicle. If you add up 710 and 290, you're going to get 1.0. So when you delete those bones that we can't use for our skeleton, that we don't have in our skeleton, you would have to now make up, you have to either add on to the thigh roll or what have you, whatever you need to do. You can do this easily, automatically, by going into weight paint mode and weights and normalize all here. If you click on normalize all, open the drop down, you probably don't want lock active on, and you can do it for all groups. Oops, why didn't that go? What's happening? Excuse me, all groups. Okay, well, I have to assume that's working, just not displaying. And then if we go to thigh roll, you can see it has now turned this thigh roll to 1.0. But you can see in the weight paint that this is a pretty rough layout. This is like, I don't know what this weird dip is here, and it's a very sudden transition. So you can do that. You probably want to go through and blur out some of this and make it look nice. I didn't. I made the mistake of not merging my vertices, which is something I always do, so that our weights look nice. So you can soften this and, adjust this from there. That's an easy way to at least get everything painted so that it's normalized and doesn't look crazy when you export it. And then the other thing, obviously, is that you could just delete all these and weight transfer. So to weight transfer, since this is a shirt, like I said, that goes past the waist, we probably want some of the thigh roll from the pants. So what I'm going to do is close all the skeleton information. Let me hide the shirt real quick. I'm going to take his upper body and just Shift D to make a duplicate of it. And let me turn on screencast keys as well, so you can see what I'm doing down here. So I've made a duplicate of his upper, and then the same for the pants. I'm just going to Shift D and make a duplicate, and then I'm going to take both of these, holding down Shift and then Control J to combine them. I'll hide the originals. And so now what I have is just this single combined object. I'm going to go into edit mode and again merge my vertices by distance. I'm going to turn sharp edges on so that we get that nice crisp edge where it's supposed to be. So we have those vertices merged, so our weight transfer will be smoother. We can go back to our shirt, unhide it, and then what we're going to do is select the body and then shift select the shirt. So you can see the body is darker orange and the shirt is lighter orange, and then go to weight paint, weights, transfer weights. People for vertex mapping, it's kind of subjective. I've seen people don't use nearest vertex all the time. I personally do. Up to you. You can experiment with this. The most important part is this source layer selected. Instead of active layer, turn this to by name. And then, let me just quickly, I just want to reselect just the shirt by itself. You can see that we have a bunch of bones that are, these are only bones that belong to our ped skeleton. They're not going to be anything weird that we don't have on our skeleton itself. However, here's the downside of this method. If you have to do something like this where, I mean, even if you didn't, I think regardless, you're going to get some extra bones in your vertex groups. And it's really not great to have a bunch of vertex groups in here that you're not actually using. For instance, you can see we have foot bones, a calf, the left and right foot. Like, we don't need all these toe bones or anything like that. This is all, you know, our shirt doesn't go down to our toes, so we don't need that. You can option A, either go through and manually delete some, by visually looking, you can see if I go to something, you can see that it's completely dark blue. There's no weight for skill or calf anywhere on our shirt, so I know it's safe to delete that. The other thing, and I've made a video about this before, is I personally use an add-on called Sushi Cleanups. And with Sushi Cleanups, it's much easier because I can just go into this drop-down delete from active object, select my shirt, delete from active object, and click on empty vertex groups. And you can see it deletes any empty vertex groups that don't have any weight assigned to them at all. So this is pretty much good to go. Again, you might get some, you can see some weird layout here. Most of the time, this weird layout is because for GTA rigging, every vertex, you know how I talked earlier about everything must add up to 1.0? There is an additional rule that you can only have up to 4 different bones affecting one single vertex at a time. So you can see this one has 3. It uses pelvis, thyroid, and spine 0. Let me see if I could easily get here. You can see that this one has 4. It's pelvis, spine 0, 1, and 2. You'll notice that it's not ever going to get more than 4. I mean, maybe when you're weight transferring it might, but you can see everything has 3 or 4 or less, basically. And that is a limit on GTA. If you have something that is using more than 4, when you export and you put it in game, it's not going to. It's just going to cut off whatever excess you've made. So that is something to watch out for. Again, there is an automatic, if you need it, there is an automatic solution to this in weights. You can go to limit total. And for all groups, you can limit it to 4 here. So that is one way to do it. If that's not always needed, especially on the weight transfer, you can see we don't have anything that's more than 4. The other thing to get rid of this kind of rough layout is usually I would go to weights and then smooth. And for all groups, you can smooth it once, maybe twice if you have to. I just think it looks a little bit better. Doesn't look as rough. And again, I mean, the thing about weight painting is that it's very subjective. Every shirt is going to look a little bit different. You're going to be, you know, your ped is going to be different from my ped. And the layout of everything is very per mesh. So I can't teach you one-to-one perfect how to rig something perfectly every time. You kind of just have to learn over time where the bones are, what bones you want where, and so on and so forth. For instance, one of the early things that you'll probably need to get used to editing is if you go to, let's say upper arm, this isn't too bad. This looks pretty good. Sometimes for a long sleeve, you'll get upper arm bones that go all the way down here, like to the way into the torso where you don't want them. So when they raise their arms, or better yet, actually the other way around, if you have a sleeve, you might see this one isn't doing it. So you might see like a spine 0 or a spine 1 that goes all the way down on the sleeve, so that when the character raises their arms, this part of the sleeve, especially the underneath part, is like sticking to the torso. It doesn't look very natural. That is because most often that you have spine bones that are all the way down here on the sleeve that you don't really want. This happens more often when you have something, this is pretty baggy, so I'm surprised it didn't do it this time. But if you have something really baggy where the sleeve is very close to the torso, when you go to transfer weights, it's probably not going to be able to differentiate between the sleeve and where the torso is very well, and you're just going to have to go through and clean up and make sure that your spine bones are on your torso where your spine would be, and your arm roll bones are on the arms. You can see it goes a little bit down here. This is also subjective. You could narrow this so that it's more just on the sleeve itself, depending. This, I wouldn't say this is very bad. I mean, I might go through here. Oh god, I forgot I was in Blender 4.3. I don't remember. I usually work in Blender 3.3, so maybe not doing it live, but I would probably go through and maybe just clean up this last remaining edges from all the way down here and take that off, and then re-normalize all my weights. So up to you. It depends. You can see, like, despite the fact that we're transferring from one ped to the other, this is fitting him quite nicely. Actually, he's got almost the same, very, very similar dimensions to Freemode, so I don't have to do a lot of editing as far as fitting it goes. Obviously, depending on what you're importing and what your ped looks like compared to Freemode, you might need to do a lot more edits than I would. I'm actually probably just going to leave the shape of the mesh as is, and I will just take the torso and just hide the arms where it's poking through. Okay, so I've deleted, you can see I just have just enough arm showing for the cuff. And then I also noticed I do have some issue. First of all, let me grab I neglected to do this earlier, but you can see it's just pink right now. It's missing the texture. I didn't grab the A uni, I grabbed the G because it's the flames. This is what I've decided to transfer to him. So with that, you can see for him, the neckline is a little bit off. I'm just gonna do it the lazy way. Just gonna grab these parts and just move this over a bit until it fits him nicely. And there we go. So that's all good to go. This is just a Solemn Mesh. The advantage of transferring from MP Freemode is that all of the Solemn stuff is already set up, all of the vertex colors are already painted, the material already has a diffuse, a spec, and a normal. So all of those things are already ready for us, which is great. And so all I'm going to do is, now that I'm ready to kind of drop this into my ped setup, I'm going to Alt-P with the shirt selected and clear and keep transformation. I can delete the hierarchy of the JBib part and then just, like I usually do, shift drag and drop it into my upper 002. Now we come to a troublesome part. So like I said, you could be lazy and you could make this a JBib with a matching torso if you really wanted to, but I want to do it properly. And what doing it properly unfortunately leads to is that I need these two different materials to be one unified texture, one unified UV. So what you can see what I'm talking about here is that this shirt, for its texture, takes up pretty much all of the room. And then this is a completely different texture, you know, it has this shirt and whatever else. And I need all of these parts from this texture, and I need to make space for them on this UV. What is this mess up here? Oh, it's just the collar. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do is combine these. I'm not going to do this on video because this is another thing where, number one, it's kind of a blender skill and not really a Solemn's GTA skill. And number two, there are a billion different ways you can do it. So let me just do that and come back and I will show you the results. Okay, so now I have rebaked all of my images to a new UV layout. You can see this was the original PED upper 000, and then this was the MP shirt, and I have now taken them and combined them. I got to thankfully leave the arms where they were, but I did have to. This is the neck piece, like near the collarbone, and then of course the watch and the bracelet he has on his other hand had to be moved upwards. And I just took up, instead of, because we're not using, this would have been like the shoulder area of his arm. Obviously we're not using that anymore, so that was free space for me to put it all onto one single UV00 layout. So I had to edit the flames diffuse. This is another one of the diffuse textures I decided to keep. And then I also had to do the same thing for the normal and the specular, which is already DDS. So quite a bit of work, but that's what you gotta do. Like I said, otherwise you would have to keep them completely separate and make this your upper and then add this in as a JBIB instead. I just wanted to be consistent with what he already has, so that was the best way to do that. Just one additional note is that I didn't change the UV map 1 at all. I only changed the UV map 0. UV map 1 is for blood mapping, and I have a feeling it's fine to leave it as is. I don't think that will mess anything up. And the only other note I can think of is that I am going to leave these as two separate PED shaders. Obviously they're using the same diffuse, normal, and spec, but if I look at the value parameters for each one of them, the specular intensity is a bit different for each one, so I'm just going to leave this as the original parameters that it had on for the skin, and then for the shirt as well. And I did merge these vertices, right? I did merge them, but I see that this could look better with a sharp edge down there. So we're good to go, I think. Like I said, the advantage of doing this is that you don't have to mess with, we have to fix the LODs, don't we? You don't have to mess with the vertex colors. They would already be good to go. You can see, and sometimes you'll see that some local PEDs are yellow instead, like a yellow-green palette. That's fine. You can use, if you were having to match things, you could obviously paint them. You can see this is a local PED, but he is the proper FF8000 orange. So if you ever run into an issue where your PED is like the yellow-green schema and you need to match it with something else, you could of course just switch them over. You can see the painting on his face. This is more for like lighting. I think it's like subsurface scattering type effects, just some sort of difference in lighting, or maybe the opposite because it is darker around his eyes and whatnot. But if you had to, worst case scenario, you could just paint the whole thing FF8000 and that would be fine too. And then color 2 is already set up, so we're good to go there. Okay, so for the last thing, again, I would have to fix the LODs. I do already know my edit, so it depends. If you did a lot, if your unification of the UV was a lot of edits, then you might just want to delete the medium and low and remake them based off of your new high LOD. If you didn't have to move your UVs around at all, then you should already be good to go. Like your medium and low already set up, already good to go. In my case, I know that it was relatively simple to, like, I just edited, oh my god, this is still, hold on. Still unmerged vertices everywhere. And let me go and do that same thing for the low. So then when I go in, back to my UV editing, oh, we have some buttons. Why are there buttons on a medium LOD, I ask you? I might edit this fitting a bit, but for the most part for the UV, all I did was move this down. So I'm just going to quickly do that and make sure I have the new diffuse that I was using set up. So this is going to be from so far away that it doesn't really have to be that accurate. And I can just make sure I get it somewhere where it looked like it used to be. That's great. So just for the sake of not having to redo these LODs, that is my medium, and then my low, I'll do the same thing. I'm just grabbing the arms so that I have a reference for what I'm looking at here. Then I'll just squeeze this down as well. Oops. That is a very crappy LOD. Okay. And like I said, I can see that, let's go back to medium. I can see that this is clipping quite a bit, and it's probably clipping even more when I switch this to medium. So for this medium, just to edit a bit, just so it's not very clearly clipping in places it shouldn't be. I need to switch the arms to medium. Oh, I haven't edited. That's, I was like, why is there so much poking through? Okay. So there's our medium, and then our low for you and low for the arms. Might be a little tricky to get a good result here. I am going to just, again, this is going to be from so far away that it's not really going to matter. So I'm just going to do right like this. And for the shirt, just grab and pull away so that it's not so obviously clipping. Let's go to low on the pants as well. I can see that. Why is the UV so weird looking? This is this is this is Rockstar's UV, not me. I don't know why it's looking like that, but I dislike all of the invisible parts, so let me just rearrange. Whoops. Just so everything is actually in a space of texture. I keep accidentally deleting. Okay. All right, that's what it's gonna have to look like. Again, this is gonna be from like this distance, so probably even farther away actually. So it doesn't really matter. I just don't like the invisible showing through, especially because our LOD is PED default. I don't even know if that's gonna show transparency, so just to keep it from looking weird at all. And then we don't need this part for the low of our arms, and we're good to go there. So we can switch everything back up to high. And I anticipate that we might have to edit the fitting of this. Because, like, you know, as you saw, I didn't really edit it at all. I just deleted where the shoulders were poking through on the arms instead. So it might clip a bit when we're walking based on what we just saw. Oh, I see it's clipping in the back actually already. I did not see that before. So I am just going to quickly drag this out a bit so that it will fit with his baggy pants. These are the only pants he has, so obviously you would want to make sure that whatever component you're adding fits with all of the other parts. Unless they're optional parts, like you saw, he has this gun sling, and I don't need that. I could have a version of this that fits with this baggy shirt instead, but I'm just gonna say that is going to fit with only the tank top, because even for this shirt that was already this is part of his gear, you can see the gunsling doesn't fit with this anyway. So we'll just say that belongs with the tank top. Again, this is something I'm neurotic about, the sharp edge on the bottom so that the hem doesn't get so dark. I really hate that effect in games, so I always change it even when I don't have to. Okay, so otherwise he is good to go for that. We have all of our parts. I'm just going to leave these separated for now in my blender, and we're good to export, I believe. Let me just double check my materials. Oh, right, they're not. I was like, why aren't they embedded? Obviously, on a non-stream ped, none of this gets embedded. It's all going into its associated YTD. So we're good to go there. We're good. I'm going to prepare for exports. I'm going to call it export. Exclude. We do not want to exclude the skeleton. He needs it for his head. Otherwise, everything else there good to go. Quixotic from the future here. When you go to export, if you are following along with me at all, you know, I was like looking over the options to blah, blah, blah. Make sure when you're looking at the drawable dropdown, make sure you're on mesh domain face corner. This is a relatively new feature. I wasn't paying attention when I recorded this the first time, and I was on vertex because vertex is for MP heads, for messing with MP heads where the order of the vertices is important. It's some, I don't know, some programming bullshit is all I gotta say. And so make sure you're on face corner. You can hover over these if you want to read more about them on your own time. But just so you know, when you go to do this, when you're doing it, mesh domain face corner. Okay? Great. Bye. Let me import him into CodeWalker. Just what I just talked about, I forgot to double check on because the shirt came from a streamed fed, came from MP Freemode, so make sure if you're using the same material, you unembed the bump and spec. And I could tell because when I went to the export folder, it exported with a folder with textures in it, and that's how I know that's not how it should be. When you export, it should just be the YDD by itself. Just a YDD.xml in here. And then when you go to the export folder, and just drag this in. And this probably won't have a texture in CodeWalker. That's fine, that's normal. Not too worried about that. We're good to go there. What we need to do, oh my god, flashbang when I accidentally. What I need to do now, just grab the original YTD in here. My face when CodeWalker doesn't auto update. Okay, and then instead I can just delete, like I said, I deleted the second head, the 001 head. So I'm just going to go through and delete all the associated textures for that, just to save on space. And then all of this other stuff I'm already using. So the only thing we need to do is add in the new textures. And you can see that I have named them, oh, he did a uni here. Oh no, it uses the arms. So I followed the same suffix as the thing I was using. He is Latino, so it's underscore lat at the end. And then the normal is the same as normal 001, 002, and then spec as well. So there we go. We have, ignore my block of pink. That's staying like that because I'm very lazy at editing specs. Okay, so we have all of what should be all of the required textures, unless I forgot one. And then we have our YDD as well. So this is good to go. The other thing we need to do is now we put in a new shirt, so we need to edit the YMT file. I use YMT editor. I don't know if there is any other program that can do this for non-free mode, so definitely recommend YMT editor for this part. Here is what it looks like if you've never seen it before. I just do file, open YMT. I'm editing his YMT, and I'm just going, it is a new upper that I added. Obviously you would use whatever category you added in. If you're doing a new category, you can just go into components and check on whichever one. If it didn't already exist, you can add in the new, and we'll do that later for the props portion as well. I'll just leave that as is for now. So I'm going to add in my 002. It has 2 textures, so I'm just going to add in a texture with this button. It's A and B. We can also view component properties. This #2FD08CEF is noise for like the fabric material, like when you're walking around. You can see it's cloth upper shirt tee. I agree with that noise. I'm going to add it in. There are lists out there of all of the different noises. I'll try to remember to link it in the description if I remember. I will link in the description all of the noises. They are very optional. It's not something you have to do, and it's very subtle, so leaving this blank is fine if you don't want to bother with that right now. But you can see, just to show you, the other one is using cloth upper jacket puffy. But so anyway, that is it for that. Obviously, you would need to know a bit more about this to add in. I'll go over a bit more because we're going to do a hat. So I'll try, well, actually, we're not going to use hair scale, are we? So for just to very quickly go over, if you've ever seen Dirty Cloth Tool, it's all the same things. It's editing a YMT file, so these are all the same properties, but this layout is obviously very different and manual, whereas Dirty Cloth Tool will do all of this work for you. But this #07AE is for scaling for heels, especially. We use this last entry to make the character rise or go lower. And then I can show you on a lower, this second hash field above that says none is also another sound entry. And you can see for lowers, because they have both a pants and shoes attached, it's all in one. His feet are not a separate foot component. They're just with the the lower. So in this second field, they put the noise for the shoes. Okay, but otherwise we have added in our new component, so I'm just going to save this file. Yes. So we're good and we're done with that. Here is my setup, and you'll notice it's the exact same setup as the original 4 files. Obviously we didn't change, I just renamed the YFT, but we didn't do anything with it. We're just copying and pasting it over. So we're good to go there. But that's everything in my stream folder, and we are ready to test in game. Okay. So I already saw it in the character creator, but let me just show you live. Here he is. Oops, I forgot to delete the other, I forgot to delete the second head. That is something you can just in the YMT, if you were doing it, if you needed to. And this would be an upper torso, whatever you call this in your clothing script. And we can see here, I saw this in the character editor. I am messing something up in my YTD. I just wanted to show this just so that we can solve this bug together live. And I can also see here there's a bit of clipping on the arm that I need to fix. And as well, I wonder about the... Well, there's no clipping when he's walking, so that's good. So it's really just a little bit more editing and then figuring out what's going on with our textures. Okay, perfect. All right, so we're gonna go back over to our files. So I've just gone through for clarity. This is the folder that I actually have for my 5M. I'm gonna go into my stream folder and just look at the YTD in here, just so I know I have the latest thing, and I can see the files in here. I know what we did wrong. Okay, so this is just a YMT edit, just something I forgot to do if you were following along. However, let's go through it. I'm going to open up the YMT in the editor as again. And first of all, I can delete that second head that I'm not using. And for the upper that we just added, I told you guys earlier that I matched the suffix for the shirt. So you can see this is A and then lat, and this one is uni. And for our new shirt, it is properly _R because we duplicated it. But the shirt being _lat at the end means that if you are adding a skin tone type thing in your YMT editor, just make sure this text ID value matches the suffix that you're using. So I just need to change this over to lat. And you can see the prop mask will also change to 17. That is for, it's pretty much either going to be probably 1 or 17 most of the times you see it, and it'll do it for you automatically when you're editing the text ID value. So that is probably the only issue we had. I'm just going to resave this. And I'm just gonna, well, I can, actually, let's fix all of our problems at once, why don't we? So I'm just going to go back and look at the, Jesus, he has a lot of stuff. Okay, and we saw on, it was this arm. Oh yes, we can see even in Blender, it's clipping a little bit right here. So I'm just going to drag this a bit away, and I probably want to do it from, material is so dark. Probably want to do it from here. I'll just make this look a different shape. And you can also, you can see, I guess, probably that the MP Freemode sleeves are a lot, their arms are a bit wider than his is, so you can see how far away it is. If you wanted to, obviously, you can edit the fitting however you want. That's completely up to you. Let me just make sure we didn't have any conflicts with the pants, which is great. Let me just double check. I'm going to move that just a little bit farther away so it has room to move. And everything should be good around here. I didn't raise his arms. I will do that the next time we go in. What is going on with that shading right there? Is it me? Okay, that's just how Rockstar wanted the shading to look like, I guess, or alternate. Oh yeah, that's their decision to have it like that. Okay, I'm not gonna mess with that. I'm just going to re-export him now that I redid the fit, and I will take that opportunity to change his name to my new name instead, and then we'll get back in game. All right, here we are back in game. You can see, oh my god, we have a, you can see I've messed up the UV a bit, or that might be my, I don't know what that is actually. Oh, and it's the problem that I was telling you guys about. Perfect. Okay, so, but if we do, this is at least using the texture, and then if we go to that texture, it's using that one as well. You can see I have clearly, I don't know what's happening there, messed up my UV in some way in between, but that's okay. Something I can fix later. And then, like I was saying about the rigging before, you can see this is the torso part has way too much weight for the upper arm, and so it is not a very good look when he lifts his arm up. We would want to go through and delete some of that upper arm weight or the arm roll weight, either one, might be both. You would delete some of that from the torso right there so that it sits closer to the body when your arms are raised. Otherwise, everything else looks fine. Oh, you can see when he turns his head a bit. Did I see some neck clipping? Yeah, there's a little bit of his head is clipping into the back of the collar a little bit. So I would just move the collar a little bit farther away so that he has freedom of movement there. But otherwise, this is basically how to do it. This is how you have it for a new component. But yeah, I'm gonna hop back in Blender and fix my whatever I did to mess up my UV, but otherwise he's done. So I will see you in the next video. We'll add a prop to him.